morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I appreciate you. You know, I began this work a couple of years ago at a calling from my ministry team at my church. They asked me, are you still interested in serving the Lord in a larger capacity after your retirement? And I said, sure. So I got into a situation where I thought this was an established, up and coming ministry that was out there doing this type of work for years and years and years. And guess what? It was. But my predecessor retired almost immediately after he trained me. And then I got to do everything. And so then COVID came along. So I had everything up and running and it was going well. I was speaking at about 20 churches a year. I had about 6 school districts that I was teaching at, with more coming. And then COVID came along. I guess you know what that's about, right? You've seen your life interrupted too. Well, we're back. We're back in schools. We're starting to preach in churches. This is one of them. This is about the 5th church since what I call post-COVID, which I would call from June out, that I've spoken at. So thank you for having me. I appreciate you. When I began my process of understanding what PCAP is about, I had to go back to what it was like when I was 15 years old. I got news from my mother that my sister's daughter had run away from home. Now, they lived on a farm, and they pretty well had the farm family, which is out there pretty much doing the farm work. And their father, my brother-in-law, and my sister thought their children were safe, that the world wasn't going to grab them and interfere. But what happened behind their backs and not in their vision of their children, one of the children decided that she was going to get involved with alcohol, and then later with drugs, a boyfriend, and she ended up running away from home with this boyfriend, who told her all kinds of great things were going to happen, you know, the two of them, and they were going to go south, get away from the weather, no more farm work. It's going to be much easier. And within a year's time, she was on the street, and he left her. She had an addiction to crystal meth, and she still has that today. That was when I was 15, so look at me now, I'm not 15. That was a long time to have to live with that addiction, and that is what it's like for a lot of people. So when we talk about things like drug addiction, that's what we think about, things of that sort. And I thought to myself, well, I could work in the recovery area, which would be where I would counsel people, and I do some of that, although I'm not qualified to do that properly. But I do, through my church, operate a ministry called We Care. And in that ministry, we meet with people who are in financial difficulty. And I'll sit down with them and do what we would do an intake, call a case intake, and we go over their situation. 95% of the time, there's some drug that's keeping them from meeting their responsibilities when it comes to bills. So now we're talking about young adults. Usually they're not married, they've got kids from various relationships, and they can't pay their bills. So they came to us in crisis. And we in fact send them to the right agencies to help them through this. But I want to back up and say, so it all starts out when drugs create this environment where that becomes the most important thing and nothing else matters. Now I want to talk to you about something that we may not think about. Give me 1 second, please. You were dead in trespasses and sins, in which you once walked, following the course of this world. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's Ephesians 2. In which you once walked, following the course of this world, following the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that is now at work in the sons of disobedience, among whom we all lived in the passions of our flesh, carrying out the desires of the body and the mind, and were by nature children of wrath, like the rest of mankind. So here we are We're in a church of God. We believe in Jesus Christ. He has saved us from that life. He has given us his life, and he has given us life eternal. And you are here because he has done this. There are two parts to that I'm pointing to. When people are so occupied with alcohol, with drugs, with getting and obtaining more of the same, and living their lives that way, how can they live for Christ? How can they know Christ? What happens to their minds? What happens to their lives? Well, I've given you an indication of some things that happen. Let me just give you one that I saw in the Bible. There was a man who lived out alone by himself in a region called the Gerasenes. When I was a kid, I used to think it was kerosene, but anyways, it's Gerasenes. And this man could not be controlled. He was so wild that when they chained him, he could break the chains. At night, he would cut himself and howl. No one wanted to go near him, and he slept in the tombs. He slept in the cemetery. Doesn't sound like a normal person, does it? Have you ever seen a raging drunk? Or somebody that's on crack? Or somebody that's on crystal meth? Or somebody that's a zombie because heroin has just taken over their mind? That's what they look like. That's what this reminds me of. This man lived in the tombs, as I said, and he couldn't be chained. By the way, he was not with his family. He was not in a town. He was out there by himself. So, fast forward. Jesus was in a boat with his disciples. They said, "Where do you want to go?" He pointed over there. He knew where he wanted to go. He headed over to this place where this man was, and they beached the boat. And as he got out of the boat, he looked up towards the man, and what he saw were thousands and thousands of spiritual beings, demons. These demons had control of this man. Now, you've often heard the expression demon drink, demon alcohol, demon drugs. We don't understand these things. This is something that goes beyond the pale of what we understand in reality, but we believe in heaven, don't we? Yet we have never seen heaven. Well, friends, there are things in this world that are going on that we cannot see, and it is a battle for people's souls. And that's what this is about. That's what PCAP is about. We're not just about making you quit drinking, quit using drugs. We're about winning souls, taking them away from the things of the world and focusing on how they can live for Christ. Now, how do I get to that in some of the work that I do? Well, I can't just walk into a school, a public school, and start preaching. If I did that, I wouldn't be around very long because these schools are not allowing that in public school. What I do is I reach people, I reach students before they get to a place where they're entrenched in a drug culture. What do I mean by drug culture? Well, once this partying attitude starts in a person, it's very hard to break away from it. Their friend base, their peers, become those that are of that culture, of the usage culture. It's hard to break that. So we try to reach young adults before we come to that place, and we give them enough information that they can make an informed decision as to why they don't want to participate in that type of culture. One of the things that we talk about is community. We talk about this type of thing as a community, church as a community, but we also talk about family as a community, and we talk about that class that they're in, another community. But I digress. Let me go back to Jesus. He walked up the beach, and he saw this man, and the man dropped on his knees, and he said, "Jesus, what do you want with me?" Don't torture me. Come out of this man, you impure spirit, Jesus said, with power. And suddenly the man was healed. That's all it takes, is for Jesus to meet you, to meet someone, and to say, come out of this man, you impure spirit. You are healed. When these people that are drug addicted come to know Jesus, it's still a struggle the rest of their lives, like I told you about my one relative. It's a struggle all their lives. But what they must deal with is a decision of what are they going to do spiritually, physically, and emotionally. We still have this struggle in our family. It's still going on. And how do we reach that person? With love. That's our responsibility, is to love them. So we go back to, again, what is it that they're looking at? What is it they're thinking about? What is it that's going on in a person's life that takes them into the partying world and makes them think that that's better? Well, the fact is, we are doing that. We are not loving them enough. We look the other way. We forget them. We let them go. So we need to be there for them. Jesus came to this man for a purpose. He healed him. And what's remarkable about what this man did afterwards is even more interesting. They sent the demons into a herd of pigs. The pigs ran out into the water and drowned. And a lot of people focus on that part of the sermon, but what I really like to focus on is afterwards, when Jesus was ready to leave with the disciples. They were getting back into the boat, and the man begged Jesus to let him come along. Why? Because Jesus represents something to us, something to our hearts, something to our souls, unlike anything else. That's why you're here today, because you love Jesus, and he has touched you and reached you. So when this man saw Jesus about to leave, he said, let me come with you. And Jesus said, no, I want you to return to your family and tell them about the mercies of God and what he has done for you. So my point there being, when we see people that are healed from alcohol, drugs, or other issues in their lives, other sin issues, they're compelled to tell their story. They're compelled to tell what Jesus has done for them. You know, this man was so successful that he went around to the nearest 10 cities and preached. And the next time Jesus came back to that area, great crowds met him. It's fantastic what this man was willing to do for his Lord. So, what about me? I'm willing to go anywhere I have to go. I drove 3 hours to come to you because I want to speak to you and just talk to you about a few things here and tell you this story about this man in the kerosene guy, and how he was healed, and how Jesus has reached you, and how Jesus needs to reach others. PCAP and our organization in the schools, how we reach the students in the schools, and how also we come to churches and we do workshops. We do electives, Sunday school classes, anything we can do to help you reach your students, your young adults, and teach parents about the symptoms and the things having to do with drugs. Somebody has to do this work. This is what we do. So I thank you for that part of the support that you're giving us. I just want to finish with this part. Computer's a little slow, sorry. For this reason, since the day we heard about you, we have not stopped praying for you. This is from Colossians 1, verses 9 to 10. We continually ask God to fill you with the knowledge of his will through all the wisdom and understanding that the Spirit gives, so that you may live a life worthy of the Lord and please him in every way, bearing fruit in every good work, growing in the knowledge of God. So, I read you that to say, pray for us. Pray for my organization, that we can successfully continue forward and reach people, that we can go to more schools, that we can go to more churches. We're domestic missionaries. So when you think about us, think about missionaries. You think about sending them overseas. That's important. But what we're doing is we're reaching people right here in our country. We're reaching people right around you. And that's what we need to be doing here. In school districts where teaching about prevention of substance abuse is being done, they have lower ratios of substance abuse failures, meaning people that are using substance abuse. In towns where substance abuse has a policy and prevention is done by the towns or the boroughs or the townships, they have a lower case rate. Where education comes first, that we reach people successfully to help them quit, everything falls down when it comes to substance abuse. It's hard for us to believe that, but it is true. In fact, even with COVID, what we have found is statistics are showing that young people are using less illegal substances and recreational drugs than they did 5 years ago, percentage-wise, per capita. So the programs that we're doing, that people are doing in schools, it's working. But we need your support, and we need to be there, and we need to continue to do this work. I've spent thousands of hours studying about opioids and marijuana and alcohol and so on. You probably could ask me a question. I wouldn't know the answer anyway because I have so much stuff crammed into my head, but I will find you the answer because that's my commitment. That's what I do. As far as your children go, if you're adults and you have children, or you're grandparents and you have grandchildren, I've had many people come up to me and ask me questions about a specific situation. What should we do? What do you think? I give you my first solution, which is let's start with love. And let's understand how we need to love this person who is in our family and not push them away. And the second part is there are agencies, there are places that you can go to get help, and we will refer you to those. Just give me a chance to look, because I can't come up with an answer right on the spot, usually. But that's the next part of it, which is getting the help from professionals. Then the third part of it is continue to love them. See, a lot of times we think in our society we fix things right away and then we can file it and go on. But the way it works is all of her life, my niece has had this problem. All of her life, her siblings have had to love her, knowing that she has this problem. And she doesn't behave well. That's the hard part. And how can you love someone through that? So, I leave you with this. We need your prayer. So do the folks that we're talking to. So think of a way that you could pray about us weekly, monthly. Not just PCAP, but those that are affected by the chronic disease of substance abuse.